Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to see all of you here and welcome to this panel. I'm Haik Kazarian, a repat from San Francisco since 2008. I've been involved with various industry activities in Armenia, both from art, education, culture to environment. And currently I share my time advising and serving on boards of several nonprofits which deal with education, women's and girls empowerment, nature, culture, and other very important aspects of life which we very much need improvement in Armenia. Today's panel discussion is on how to run an NGO from A to Z. We have a wonderful panel and we'll be discussing several very prominent questions that might be raising in your heads. But today, firstly, let me give you a short explanation on what is it that we'll be talking about. Let's start with the difference, basically, between nonprofit and, for example, a foundation. So for some time now, Armenia has been dealing with these additional new types of organizations, and most probably the general public has come across these terms: foundation, nonprofit, charity, in their daily activities. So the high chances are that these terms are either inaccurately used or used interchangeably, although all refer to organizations aimed at helping the less fortunate in the societies. There are differences based on how they are formed or governed and the source for funding. So what is a nonprofit? Very briefly, I'll explain. It is a charitable organization with a specific social goal that uses its revenue and surplus to fund its operations rather than benefiting the organization's members, shareholders, employees, or leaders. The runover profits are channeled further to their goals. Nonprofits receive donations from the government, foundations, institutions, and individuals, just to name a few. These funds are then directed to set charitable work. They can operate in research, religious, education, even scientific settings, and are tax exempt. The NGO is a non-governmental organization, also known as a civil society organization, whose funds could be raised by the government, but it maintains very much a non-governmental position with no need for any governmental counsel. A private foundation, for example, is an independent legal entity set up for solely charitable purposes, unlike a public charity, which relies on public fundraising to support its activities. The funding for a private foundation typically comes from a single individual, a family, or a corporation, which then receives a tax deduction or for donations. So these are the official descriptions for these types of entities, but of course, each country has its own specific guidelines. So we have a legal representative from another repat organization here from Legal Lab. Should we need a legal counseling on any question, which we cannot cover through the expertise of this panel, we will truly turn to Mary Ohanyan from Legal Lab. Thank you, Mary, for being here with us today. Okay, so let's turn to our panelists now. We have I'll actually give a short intro on each speaker and I'll ask them specific questions and then we'll give a more in-depth picture on how and why they're doing what they're doing at this point. So I'd like to start with Sarkis. Sarkis Balkhian is a human rights activist focusing on Middle East and the South Caucasus regions. He's the executive director of Aleppo NGO, an Armenia-based group supporting refugees from Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, Syria, and Artsakh. He has previously worked at Human Rights Watch and USA for UNHCR in Washington, DC. Sarkis holds a Bachelor of Art in Political Science and Genocide Studies from Clark University and a master's degree in diplomacy and international relations from Yerevan State University. Sarkis-Jan, welcome. Can you please tell us briefly about your NGO, the mission, its daily functions? What was the main reason for you to establish the NGO? What was the timing? You woke up one day and just said, okay, I got to do this myself. And in general, what are the insights and challenges about establishing an NGO in Armenia? The steps, the documents, what do you start with? Is it possible to start it by yourself or you do require some legal support?
Thank you very much, Lucinev, and thank you, Repat, for inviting me to participate in the panel. Aleppo NGO was established in 2013 as a direct result of the flow of primarily Syrian Armenian refugees into Armenia. And it was established by a group of Syrian Armenians. More than 95% of the founding members were women. And I'd like to think that the reason for that is because men create or tend to create the world's problems and women try hard to fix it. But the organization was established to give a voice and empower Syrian Armenians in Armenia to vocalize the primary issues that they were facing in Armenia, which were primarily employment and housing related issues. Of course, over the last 7+ years, the organization started off as a very small organization, volunteer-based organization. But over the last 8 years, we have implemented more than 50 different projects, collaborating with dozens of local and international organizations. We provide a variety of support programs to Syrian, Iraqi, Lebanese, and unfortunately, since September 27, 2020, to Artsakh Armenians, including financial assistance, educational programs such as scholarships and financial aid to university students, housing programs, free housing for both Syrian Armenians and Artsakh Armenians currently, food and hygiene support, the basic humanitarian assistance that we've been providing since day one since the establishment of the organization. And going back to your primary question in terms of the insights and challenges of establishing an NGO in Armenia, the process of establishing an NGO in Armenia is actually fairly straightforward. There is an NGO law in Armenia that everybody can access online and see both in Armenian and English. And the process is fairly simple, but just to be on the safe side, it would be actually good to consult with organizations such as Legal Lab, Mary Ouzounian, who's representing them today, to basically so that the organization or the lawyer itself, himself or herself, would help in the drafting of the charter, setting limits or setting no limits in terms of membership of the non-governmental organization. And in terms of the essentials that you need to establish an organization is obviously you need a president or a director for the organization. And the one key component that is essential for any non-governmental organization or foundation is to hire a very, very good and competent accountant, and hopefully also purchase a good accounting software and not only set yourself a limit of using Microsoft Excel. In Armenia, the most common software used is the Armenian software. It's actually called Armenian software, Haik Kazarian, which is the accounting software used most commonly in Armenia, both in the NGO and nonprofit sector, as well as for-profit sector. And according to the most recent changes in the law, I believe you're gonna have to, at the end of each year, conduct an annual audit of all the financial flow of the organization to ensure that everything was handled properly by the accountant. But the process is, as I mentioned, fairly simple, but it would, I mean, in any country, in any setting, it would be good to consult with a lawyer while drafting the charter and establishing the organization.
Great, thank you very much, Sarkis. And I would like to ask you to respond to my second question once Araz covers it from her organizational perspective. So let's meet Araz Kazarian Marketing. Araz is the CEO and co-founder of All For Armenia organization, born and raised in Beirut, Lebanon. Araz came to Armenia in 2016 to volunteer for Birthright Armenia, Go Birthright, and has since repatriated to Armenia. During the beginning days of the 2020 war, the 44-day war of Artsakh, she and her husband Matthew worked on the ground to gather and deliver urgent humanitarian aid to both soldiers, refugees, basically whoever was in need, and others affected by the war. Since then, their mission has grown and raised tens of thousands of dollars for the cause, and has helped about 800 families who were affected by the war. Amazing. Araz currently works in Armenia and as a technical product manager at Pixart. So Arajan, thank you for being here. As I'm requesting all the other panelists, as an intro, could you please talk a little bit about your NGO, the mission, the functions, what was the main reason for you to establish the organization, and please share with us some of the inside kitchen details. How is the management process organized?
Hi, Lucinejan. Thank you so much for your kind introduction, and thanks to Repats Armenia for this opportunity. All For Armenia was born the same day, the first day of the war in September 2020. And so basically, my husband and I had the idea to just open a fundraising, just to fundraise from our friends and families. And we decided to go to Syunik region the next weekend and provide humanitarian aid, emergency aid, which is like mostly food and hygiene. That's what they told us. And every week, like once we went there, we realized that we have to go back again. And that's what happened every week. The number of the displaced families went exponentially up, increased exponentially. So there was more help needed, and so many families we met, they were telling us, you're the first ones arriving. And so we felt very responsible to go every weekend there. It was very challenging actually, because we didn't have anything as like, we weren't, I wouldn't say we were 100% safe, right? Because we were going almost to the border, and but we had this mission and saying that, you know, we should be there with our people. We need to not only bring them food and hygiene, but also show them that they're not alone. So by the time we had our friends reach out to us, our friends internationally reach out to us and said, how can we help? And so far we helped over 800 families at least once. And by the time we reached 15 volunteers from 8 different countries, and we said, okay, now what? We can use all our skills. You know, we have different skills. We have different profession. Like we're different professionals, and like we're doers. We're a team of doers. We shouldn't just stop here, right? We should create long-term sustainable projects, and yeah, that should be our goal. And honestly, we didn't have the plan to initially we didn't have the plan to create an NGO. We were just doing it as like individuals, right? But again, we felt the responsibility, and the post-war and everything that happened show us that we need to be more. We don't have a lot of time. We need to strengthen our new borders, and yeah, we just have to do what we want to, you know, see. So this is why we decided to create an NGO and yeah, and operate as an NGO. Regarding the second question of like how the management is done, so so basically, imagine it's like as a command, like again, because we were born during the war, but actually we had very effective management way of working. We are small teams, you know, as commando, efficient, autonomous teams. And we also have a consultant, Sebak, who's from Lebanon. He's helping us to set up all the processes and making sure that we don't have any like non-efficient or like, you know, contradictory workflows. So yeah, as I said, it's actually super easy to work with the team, even if we're like different time zones. And 80% of our team has also full-time work in parallel. But again, as we have the same mission and vision, and we love what we do, we're all committed, and we all find time to do our contribution, our work that is needed. And we don't feel the work is stopped, because what will lead us is the love to Armenia and the love for us to see results. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And we will get back to the question about how to work with time differences and then locations as well. Thank you. Sarkis, do you want to jump in and add anything?
Yeah, I mean, just briefly about the management process of the organization. Obviously, it's very contingent on the size and the scope of the operations of the organization. But over time, after Aleppo NGO was initially established, we reached out to friends, acquaintances from around the world. And in the case of Aleppo NGO, I would say half the board members of the organization are actually based in Europe and the United States, and the rest are based in Armenia. So you do want to have board members when you're establishing an organization, because a lot of those board members are actually going to do a lot of the fundraising for the organization as well over the course of operations and implementing the mission of the organization. You also want to have, depending again on the scope of the operations, you also want a lot of members who can at least volunteer to help implement different types of projects and programs, whether it be on the humanitarian front, educational front, cultural front, or whatever that may be. And in terms of another component of the management beyond the staff and the permanent staff that I guess we'll get back to that question later, is to also set up an oversight committee that kind of reviews the operations, both from the financial and programmatic side, beyond the annual auditing that independent auditors conduct at the end of each year. So from a management standpoint, it would be good to set up board members, an oversight committee, and have as many members as possible who can at least volunteer and contribute by supporting the organization on whenever they're free and available. And that's how Aleppo NGO was essentially established. Initially, we had more than 100 volunteers, primarily women and youth. And over time, it evolved from more of a volunteer-based organization into more of a professional operating NGO.
Great, that was very informative. Thank you very much. Let's go on to our next question and presenter. Ouzounian is from the US and has been living in Armenia for nearly 4 years already. He's become involved with the Artsakh relocation project around the time the war was ending. Prior to working with the Artsakh relocation project, he was teaching English in Yerevan and is an alumni of another Birthright Armenia alum. Alexjan, welcome. Please tell us briefly about the birth of your organization. What was it about? What is it about? How do you make it possible to raise funds and on a permanent basis and for a long term? Basically, that is the million-dollar question. How do you maintain the sustainability of the organization without losing sleep? Well, basically, it's not really possible, but let's hear it. How do you tackle that issue? And of course, introduce the organization.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Yeah, the Artsakh relocation project was started in late October, early November of 2020. Yeah, as a winding down of the war, even before we knew the war was ending, a friend of mine who I met through Birthright, him and his wife, my friend Hago, his wife Ellen started the relocation project. Prior to that, though, I was kind of laid off from school because of the COVID protocols. So basically what ended up happening is I started a GoFundMe campaign, and I got in contact with someone that used to work at Birthright, and they gave me a list of families that were host families for Birthright Armenia, any volunteers that went to Artsakh, they were there. So They gave us a list of those families, and we started getting in contact with the ones that were in Yerevan or close to Yerevan. And with the GoFundMe money, I was able to start buying hygiene products and other groceries for the families. And through that process, my eyes were kind of opened up, especially living in Yerevan, like not being close to the war, not necessarily seeing it aside from through pictures, seeing what some of these families were dealing with, whether it's the loss of a family member or their living conditions. It kind of motivated me to take it to the next step. So my friend Ellen Oganessian started the relocation project. I became involved with that. And so we've, since that point, have been assisting with food, hygiene products, essential items, some cases rent, utility payments, and all that. And then as far as how we're able to continue to raise funds, we offer a sponsorship program. So a person from the diaspora or in Armenia that wants to work with, to sponsor a family, we're able to connect them with the family. They can provide weekly, monthly, or one-time sponsorship donations. From that point, we purchase the items, either deliver or have the family come to the local store that we work with to pick up the items. With that sponsorship program, we also offer the opportunity for the sponsor to be in contact with the family, which continues like a connection, which to me is a very important thing. Not every sponsor is doing that. It's completely up to them, but if they're interested, they do have the opportunity, regardless of how long they're sponsoring a family, whether it's a month or for 6 months, they're able to work with the family, talk to the family. And my hope long-term is we're able to, when COVID is kind of under wraps, more people can come here and meet with these people that they've been sponsoring, create like a kind of a new community, if you will. So that is kind of a way we've been able to sustain donations over the course of all these months. And long-term, I think that process will continue to work.
Great, thank you, Alex. I will ask you to please stand by to answer the next question together with our next presenter. I'd like to introduce Haik Kazarian, a Canadian Armenian repat and a social entrepreneur living in Armenia since early 2018. I know Haik from another very important effort called Smart Apaga, dealing with something very close to my heart, which is recycling. But today he'll be talking about another of his endeavors. So during the 44-day war, he started a fundraiser that later became Transparent Armenia Charitable Foundation. Since then, over 40,000 IPDs have received aid from Transparent Armenia Charitable Foundation at least once. And over $200,000 worth of aid has been distributed all over Armenia with more sustainable projects that are expected ahead. So Haik, please tell us, introduce your organization, explain how you manage the transparency between the NGO and the donors. What's the mirror that is that's going to be so clean and sharp to actually make sure that the organization passes through its activities smoothly without any issues? And maybe Alex can continue with that.
Thanks, Lucina Jan, and thanks, Repat, for organizing this and for inviting me. It's always nice to talk with everybody here. Basically, the TACF, so Transparent Armenian Charitable Foundation, is a Canada-based foundation. So we have a foundation in Canada, an NGO in Armenia. We work on raising funds to implement direct aid and sustainable projects and enable IDPs, so internally displaced persons, to empower themselves through work and education. And we do this through the local NGO that we started. But this all really started when I actually tried to go and volunteer to fight, and they kind of turned me down because of citizenship reasons, and I have no experience in the military. They're like, if we send you there now, you're going to be like peeling potatoes. So if you're Canadian, might as well, do some fundraising. And so I decided, okay, why not? I'll do some fundraising, but in a slightly different way than the traditional large foundation ways where you have this large pool of money. So I decided to go at it in a kind of more transparent and more accountable way. So at first, I didn't actually really plan on opening an NGO or foundation. I was just receiving money directly in my personal account in Canada, and I was withdrawing the money here. I was showing what that money was spent on. And this was like close family and friends that were sending it. I even had a friend from like elementary school that was in my bus in Canada as a kid. And I really appreciated all the trust that was given to me, but I later realized that it's more of the accounting method that made our fundraiser become so popular, which was the fund in, fund out accounting method, which means that every dollar that comes in, not only is it accounted for and and shown transparently. So there's like a public list, like an Excel sheet, basically, that shows who has sent what. But we decided that we're going to go in a chronological way, that the first dollar in is the first dollar that gets spent. And this way we can associate the donations with what they had purchased. And so it kind of quickly became like almost viral among my friends and Facebook friends, basically. And we started working with a Swedish NGO called A Demand for Action. And the amounts that were coming in donations became significant enough that we basically didn't have a choice but to register an NGO. And later we decided to also, with our lawyer, Ida, to register a Canadian charitable foundation to take advantage of tax exemptions for Canadians who would be donating to get tax deductions. We haven't successfully gotten our charitable designation yet. We were told that it's going to take forever. We're like, no, it will be fine. We'll get it done. But no, it's taking forever. So we're still waiting for that charitable designation. And yes, so far we have raised over 200,000 US in kind and funding donations. So just A Demand for Action has contributed over half of the 200,000. Throughout these 6 months, we've had over 120 volunteers, and we have a large database of beneficiaries or IDPs that we have reached. That is over 40,000 individuals, or around 9,000 families. So this has been with food, clothes, hygiene, and medicine. This is more or less what we've been doing so far. Now we're looking at to continue as is, but also to have a more sustainable approach to basically not keep giving fish, but finding ways to teach people to fish or to give the opportunity to people to fish. And in this case is not fish, it's more towards chickens, believe it or not. So we just launched yesterday a campaign of finding families that have the opportunity to raise chickens. And we will be providing them the tools and the livestock necessary to do that. And to basically build it, we just need to keep successfully raising funds and asking people to participate in what we're doing. Oh, the transparency part. To talk about the transparency part. So honestly, I think that transparency is very easily achievable, just by like opening your books and showing proof of how you've helped and who you've helped. But the thing is that not everybody really necessarily wants to be transparent, and there's reasons for that. So competition is one of them. So for example, it was very easy to see what we were doing from the very beginning because everything was available publicly. But soon after, and we started on the second day of the war, and soon after, I can count at least 6 or 7 other NGOs or individuals who started doing something that's exactly similar to what we were doing, which is not a bad thing. But indeed, some may not want to be as transparent in order to keep some competitive advantages and to compete for donations. So this is a reason why some don't want to be as transparent. Another reason is that there's already so much scrutiny when you're an NGO or in a foundation for you not to be laundering money and doing all these bad things, that having to be accountable to the public and just imposing more accountability on yourself is almost counterintuitive. When I was pitching the way that we wanted to work to Aida, our lawyer, she basically said, you're telling me that you want me to tie your hands and shoot you in the foot? And and you basically have to be even more accountable than you would be if you were just doing it the traditional way. So it's not something that most NGOs feel compelled to do, but in order to differentiate ourselves and instill the sense of trust that we have so far and that has gotten us to where we are now, I found that I don't mind tying my hands and shooting myself in the foot. And so this is what we have done so far. So transparency is important, but not everybody's ready to do it necessarily, in my opinion. But it's not very difficult to do.
As long as at the end of the day, the main goal is support and reach the audience, or reach the beneficiaries, and not fall into the cracks of administrative traps. Alex, do you have anything else to add to this question?
Yeah, one of the ways we've been able to combat that as far as people trusting what we're doing is not only with the sponsorship program, where someone can get in contact with a family that they're sponsoring if they would like, but we also provide receipts for the transactions where your money is going. That is on request for the specific families, the specific days they went to the store, they had delivered items. So those are our two ways of continuing to keep that up. And that goes back to the idea of how we are able to do long-term fundraising. And it's not just about that, in my opinion. I also think for future NGOs, or whether it's in Armenia or other places, like we're just trying to make sure they have an opportunity to start fresh and have the situation where they can say, you know what, maybe Artsakh Relocation and all these other organizations, they're doing good work because of their transparency. Therefore, someone else is going to be able to have that opportunity to also have that level of trust to begin with.
Great,
yes,
thank
you. Yeah, receipts, absolutely important. I forgot to mention that. So yeah, we have a Google Drive where all the receipts are accounted for, and we have a sheet that says which receipt. And even if somebody really wants to, they can go and find the receipts that their money paid for. So yeah, thanks, Alex. This is very important to have things that are available for people to see and audit on their own if they want to.
Great. This slowly rolls into our next question, which is how are Armenian NGOs seen with the eyes of the diaspora? In the eyes of the diaspora, let's start with Alex, and Araz, please jump in if you have anything to add.
Yeah, so once I became involved with the relocation project, the GoFundMe money that I raised privately was relatively easy because it was just my name on a website and people know me and they were able to trust in what I was going to do with it. But then when I got involved with the relocation project, because of maybe some transparency issues with other organizations here in Armenia, it became difficult where people were sort of clamoring to know a little bit more and all that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like if we're able to continue to maintain with as many great organizations as there are doing good work in a variety of different sectors in Armenia, we can kind of get rid of some of the residue of whatever maybe other organizations have done in the past. And I've been able to meet a lot of wonderful people doing a lot of wonderful work in Armenia. And so my hope going forward is with the reputation of the organizations that are here, the diaspora can look at those and continue to say, you know what, they're doing a good job and we should give people the benefit of the doubt as opposed to just second guessing everything all the time. But what I would also say is do your research. And like I've told donors throughout the months, basically, I'm not necessarily concerned about donating to our specific program. I will say, I want you to donate to someone, whether it's a person, organization, or another organization that you trust. Word of mouth is very key on that. But to me, like, as long as people know that their money is being used correctly, it's all good. But it has been difficult in the past. It has gotten a bit better. Once in a while, we run into some hiccups, but because we're all doing our best and we're as transparent as we can be, We haven't run into any issues, and I hope that we can continue to do that with all these wonderful organizations that are here.
Yeah, I would like to add on what Alex said, that in the global situation that we're in now, I think the diaspora is willing to help more small organizations, small NGOs like us that have clear projects and ensures transparency. They communicate with their donors, and it's not like I don't know, for example, we are working on this, we created the tech center in Goris, which provides educational programs to the teenagers from 14 to 18 years old in Goris, and that are also including the displaced teenagers from Artsakh, of course. And, you know, we were just by communicating with our donors and you know, saying that this money will go, for example, to the tables, this money will go to the chairs, and so on. That helped us a lot to kind of involve our donors, and like it's more than donation; it's like actually investment, right? So, so that's what keeps us. And other than that, I would like to add that. Our biggest advantage was that we had friends over all the world, and that was also thanks to the Birthright Armenia. And our friends, of course, trusted us, and that also helped us to reach out to their friends and like also raise more money. So, so of course, it's very important, the communication, the transparency, and yeah, showing results, because some people are tired and of giving, and you know, we should find this, I don't know, like we should also involve them, our donors, not only financially, but also like there are so many things to do. For example, they can just become a volunteer and teach for our tech center, and you know, share their skill set with our teenagers. There's like million ways to contribute, and it's not just like financial wise. So yeah, thank you.
May I also add one other thing? Yeah, so one of the things we're doing is we've had people contact us on social media over the past months and say, hey, I'm coming to Armenia. I would love to donate to your organization. I've heard good things from this person or this other organization, so on and so forth. So what I've done in several cases is I'll have someone come meet with me, and they'll say, here's $100, here's $50, please give it towards the family. And if the person is willing, what I do is I say, come with me on a delivery, whether or not come with me to the local store that we work with. Let's buy the items together. You can keep the receipts. You can see where all your money is going, because sometimes people don't realize how far a dollar can go. And then on the other end of that, when they come on visits to families, it's a whole nother thing, because they're seeing the impact of whatever money they've donated or received from other people. And it just adds a whole nother level of joy and sadness at the same time. It's a mixture of emotions, because on one hand, you're like, I'm so happy I could help this person or this family with whatever it is. But at the same time, they're like, wow, things need to get better, and how can I help? And it goes back to word of mouth. With those things happening and the level of transparency, people are going to go back home and say that was a wonderful experience. And again, I hope that it's not just about us. Like, I don't look at it as just, oh, how do we continue to get more people? I look at it more as how can we continue the trend of progressing transparency and honesty between NGOs and the diaspora for a long time to come.
Very important. Absolutely, yes. Let's move forward. Sarkis, you talked about basically the birth of your organization having about 100 volunteers. That's how it kind of started. Can you please talk about your staff? How are they volunteers? Do they get paid? Do you work personally full-time? Is it part-time? How do you deal with that?
Thank you for the question, Lucina. So as I mentioned, we were established in 2013. When the organization was initially launched and registered officially in Armenia, I was actually already in Washington, DC. So for the first 4 years of operations, my role within the organization, I was a volunteer basically based in the United States, and I did a lot of fundraising and advocacy work in the United States to help support the organization that was operating in Armenia. And in the first, I would say, almost 2.5, 3 years, the organization functioned solely based on the work of obviously the government accountant, as I mentioned earlier, that provides the financial and tax reports to the equivalent of IRS here in Armenia. And we had one part-time employee, a secretary that was handling some of the coordination work during humanitarian distributions and so on. And so at the very beginning, it was very much a volunteer-based organization. But over time, I mean, in terms of fundraising, if you want to make the organization sustainable, in the initial period, you're going to base your funding on individual donors, friends from Armenia and from abroad. But over time, if you want to become a sustainable and fully fledging organization, you're going to develop the experience and use that experience to also apply for grant funding. And in Armenia, there's a lot of grant opportunities, especially financed by the US government and the European Union. And for the most part, you know, within the first 12 months of operations, you will most likely not receive a grant because you don't have enough history as an organization. But once you start having a history and a proven track record of success, you can also apply for different grant opportunities. And through the grant funding, you can start also hiring full-time or part-time employees. So at the moment, Aleppo NGO has approximately 11 employees. Half of those are actually employees of the social enterprise that the organization established in November 2018, known as Aleppo or Aleppo's Cuisine Center. And the other half are actually the staff members of the NGO itself, who handle project coordination, research work, as well as the operations of the daily operations of the organization and the implementation of the project. So over time, since we've been, I mean, it seems like because we've been operating for almost 7.5 years, unlike some of our colleagues on the panel, we transitioned from a volunteer-based organization to a staff-based organization. You know, it's also a tricky process because initially when your donors become accustomed to the organization functioning solely on volunteer efforts, when you start adding staff and add administrative fees, because if you have an office, you have to pay for electricity, rent, gas, internet, etc. Some of your donors, if you've trained them that everything is, or 100% of their donations go towards the actual humanitarian assistance that you're providing, it becomes a bit more difficult later on to explain to your donors that, you know, we're going to use, you know, 5-10% of the funds raised towards administrative expenses that are, whether you like it or not, required to fully function as an organization. I mean, personally, or I just want to add, so the first 4 years of operations, I was a volunteer based in the United States, or the first 3 years. When I returned back to Armenia, I continued working for Human Rights Watch as a Middle East consultant for almost a year. And I was also volunteering for Aleppo NGO. Then I left my job at Human Rights Watch, took a major pay cut, and yes, I became a full-time staff of Aleppo NGO.
Wonderful, thank you. I would now like to talk to Araz about differences, time differences, culture differences. Can you please explain the basic working process that's between your team here and the diaspora, apart from the fact that with the US we have 9 to 12-hour difference, of course, and COVID has proven that it is not such a bad idea to reevaluate the connections and make more online communication. So I assume that the data flow has doubled at this point. So can you explain how you alternate activities between here and the diaspora?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Nejan. So actually, again, our strength, our power of as the All for Armenia team is the diversity, because I wouldn't say we're all Armenians. We have also volunteers that are not Armenians, but they're also contributing for this cause, and we're so grateful for that. But also, just to say that we have a very diverse team from, as I mentioned, from 8 different countries. And it's just like amazing to see the fusion between these people. There are some people who again knew each other from Birthright Armenia, but there were others that they didn't know each other. So basically we communicate through Slack. We have transparency, we have different channels, you know, we have different sub-teams where we can just like manage the different conversations. And actually it's a very big advantage to having different time zones, because you know, so I can open task for the developers when I finish my work, which is after 7 or 8 p.m. But then they're just like, it will be their morning, so they can right away work on that task. Or, you know, just like we work in a way that we're kind of independent from each other. So we have our board where we open a task when it's needed, we assign it for the right person, you know, and we just like try to communicate and update everyone through Slack, because sometimes it's, you know, we're just like moving forward fast and we can't just like tell everyone what's happening. But despite the challenge, we try to communicate always with our team. We do actually we do something very interesting. We do like weekly mental health session between our team. Either if you're in contact with the displaced families, or you're in the States working remotely to contribute for this cause, and we just like share our, I don't know, like thoughts, or like, you know, the traumas, or like anything that is related, or you feel bad because you couldn't help this person, or in general, like we just share our thoughts together. Of course, we're not here to solve everyone's problem, but it's good to hear each other. And for example, last week, 2 weeks ago, we did the grand opening of the Goris Tech Center, and all the volunteers who are based in Armenia, we all went together for the weekend there, and we just like organized everything together. And it was just amazing and beautiful to see this. And of course, the people, like the volunteers who are outside Armenia also contributed, also helped us to reach there. So one person with creating a Venmo, to another person to like fundraising, another person to like just sharing and you know, creating awareness. So what we are doing, because again, we're a very small team and we're not backed by any, we're all like volunteer for the moment, but then, yeah, we're just like trying to find different ways. As Haik, we are also trying to have the NGO registered in the US and have tax deductible. So, but for the moment, we are using our friends NGO that is also from in our team. So you just see that the diversity and the people, wherever they are, as long as they have the will to help, the will to collaborate, the will to add and value and impact, everything else is possible. So yeah, I hope I answered to your question. Thank you.
Of course, and if there are any other questions that are left that are not being answered, the audience is more than welcome to share their thoughts and questions on the panel. So I'd like to go back to Haik. As I was closely following your post on Facebook during the war, promoting transparency and assessing the need on the spot, Could you please explain the tricks of the trade for marketing and promotional strategies you used, and what were the challenges for that?
Sure. I mean, I don't think there were any tricks or anything. The way it started, I made one Facebook post. I said I have nothing against Himnadram, because a lot of people were advocating that money should only go there. And I said, you know what, I have nothing against that. I also donated to Himnadram, so like I was totally okay with that. But if I thought that if I were just to go online and reiterate what everybody has been saying, that everybody should be donating to Himnadram, I wouldn't be really making much of an impact. Knowing that my close friends and some family members, and knowing that a lot of people would really, really much rather see exactly what their money was doing, I basically offered that, okay, all those of you who would rather see exactly what your money does, who trust me to do this honorably, I have an account in Canada. You can send money there. I'll show you what I've withdrawn and what I've spent it on. And I just made one Facebook post like that. And that's where it really all started. Thus far, though, I probably should start, but so far, I've never contacted anybody directly to ask for money. I've always done Facebook posts, and usually it will be when we're running out of money. I will make a Facebook post, fundraiser update. This is what we've done so far. This is what we have left. And from the very beginning, I never really imagined this becoming as big as it became. We were receiving maybe like $2,000-3,000 every couple of days, and that money was spent the next day, packaged into care boxes and sent to as aid. So we never knew if we were going to get more money later. In retrospect, if I knew it was going to become this big, I would have probably done things a little bit differently to promote sustainability. But in all honesty, all I ever did was make Facebook posts saying that, hey, we're running out of money. We have still, like currently, we have around 1,400 families on a waiting list that we don't have anything to give them yet. And we've reached out to Aznavour Foundation. We've reached out to Himnadram as well. Unfortunately, the only other NGO we've received aid from was Tikunk. That's Nerses NGO. They gave us around 2 million dirham worth of, or 1 million, or anyways, I think $2,000 worth of food that we packaged and distributed. So right now, due to donor fatigue, due to the fact that we don't really want to be just delivering, everybody's doing that now, right? Everybody's packaging boxes and delivering them to IDPs. So we're like, okay, let's do something a little different. And so now we attempted to raise funds around $10,000 to $20,000 for the chicken or bee experiment, as we call it, which is to try to get not necessarily high-tech education, which a lot of organizations are going towards too, teaching kids how to use computers and things like that, but more for those who lost their homes that were near the borders with Azerbaijan, that were raising cattle and chickens and bees and planting stuff. So to help these people kind of get back into that, but in the territory of Armenia, because a lot of we now have around 600 families who applied that they filled out a questionnaire that have the possibility to raise. They basically got displaced into another village in Armenia where they have the space to do this, but they left everything behind, so they can't. So this is what we're raising funds for now. But in terms of marketing and promotion, I think what's most important is to show what you're doing. I've started dabbling in making videos, with some music in it that like talks about a specific family. The idea is so that the donor is able to have a connection with who they're helping. This was easy at first, like when we were getting $200 or $500, and we could go take a picture of every single person we helped and do a little interview with them, and this was very powerful. But at our peak, we delivered around 1,400 packages in 1 week. there's no way you're going to be able to videotape all of them and, you know, make nice little videos and pictures about them. It's just impossible. So you kind of pick and choose. At some point, we did time lapse so that people could see, like in Karlov Czech Brewery, people were coming to get the clothes that were sent from Sweden, and we had a time lapse where people could see, you know, just like bees, you know, going back and forth. But all in all, our fundraising has always been based on just announcing that we need some amount of money, or that we're running out of some amount of money, and our donors, a lot of whom are reoccurring donors, would say, okay, this month I can give some more, and we would raise maybe 5,000-6,000 and implement the aid. Now we're gonna have to have a different approach. We have a few ideas, but they're not, you know, that well established yet for me to kind of share them with you now. The idea is to get people to trust what you're doing and to feel like their donations actually have a tangible impact. It doesn't appear like there's an impact if the money they sent is just like rolling around in some big you know, account with lots of money, and, you know, the $25 that somebody sends just floating there. There's no connection that is felt between the money sent and the impact that it has. But when you see that your $25 bought, I don't know, 50 kilos of potatoes that went to like 10 different families, you know that happened. It's a finite resource that you were able to contribute. You know that it was spent on something tangible, and you're more likely to do that again. This is what I would say.
Right. Yep. Very informative. Thank you. I think Sarkis wanted to add to this with one of the answers from the panelists, or was that a different question? Because I would like to add another question from one of our audience, Tolin Sarian. She would like to find out what are any efforts are there any efforts to amplify the many small and mid-sized NGOs that exist? For example, what One Armenia is doing. Can any of you say whether you'd be interested, or are you working with another amplifier organization? If not, then Sarkis, you'd like to answer, I believe, Anush's question.
Does that mean like collaborating with other NGOs?
Sure, to amplify your efforts, like not only Facebook-wise, but of course, Facebook is a great tool. But so we're getting questions at this point. If Sarkis would like to pick that up, if not, we'll go on to the next question.
Yeah, I mean, over the course of the last 7 years, we've also collaborated with One Armenia specifically, actually. They did a fundraising campaign that was called Santa's Wanted, where they wanted to distribute the winterization clothes and gifts for Syrian Armenian refugee children around the New Year's. This was a few years back. We collaborated with them. The campaign was extremely successful. We exceeded the target that we had set, or at least One Armenia had set, and we collaborated with them because we have a large database of Syrian Armenians, Artsakh Armenians, Lebanese Armenians who are currently living in Armenia. In terms of the growth of, I guess, philanthropy within Armenia, I think the best example of that was during the war. If I'm not mistaken, around 30+% of the donations that were provided to the All Armenia Fund during the 44 days of war came actually from people who were living within Armenia, as opposed to only basing it on donations from the United States, Europe, South America, Russia, and elsewhere. So I think there is a growing sense of philanthropy in Armenia, and there are definitely more opportunities to collaborate with local organizations, but at the same time also businesses. For example, one of the initiatives that we constantly do for the last 4 or 5 years is the distribution of food and hygiene vouchers to Syrian Armenians, Lebanese Armenians, and most recently with Artsakh Armenians. We constantly collaborate with the Carrefour supermarket, which is an international supermarket that has, I believe, 3 different branches in Armenia. And they tend to give us about 5 to 10, up to 13% in additional vouchers or discounts to distribute to our beneficiaries. So for example, if we purchase 5 million dirhams worth of vouchers and they add to that an additional 10%, that's another 500,000 dirhams or $1,000 worth of vouchers that we use to distribute for additional families. So there are definitely opportunities for collaboration in Armenia, not only in the nonprofit sector, but also in the private sector.
Good. We're actually almost done with the main administrative questions, but I'd like to actually just throw some legal questions out there, and I hope Mary can answer these. Let's maybe talk about. Oh,
sorry, can I just add something on what
yes,
Sarkis
of course.
said? Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I would like to also add that we also collaborated with so many different NGOs and in Armenia and internationally, for example, with Artsakh relocation project, with Alex, with so many different occasions, either with clothes or hygiene, just like whatever was needed, and like we were just like reaching out to each other. Or for example, we also collaborated with SOSE NGO and with Therapists for Armenia. We got like 1,000 books, educational books from Therapists for Armenia, and thanks to that we could use it for the Christmas gift for all the kids, the displaced kids. And other than that, in parallel to our tech center, Goris Tech Center that we just launched, we renovated the center where we put, it's kind of a small sewing machine room with 5 to 6 sewing machines. We understood that, you know, we didn't have the budget for the sewing machines, but we found that they were like Hadrutsi women, that they had the experience in that. So we wanted to give them jobs. We wanted to create jobs. So we collaborated with SOS Chrétien d'Orient, so that are now actively in Goris, also I think Stepanakert and Yerevan. And thanks to that collaboration, they could buy all the sewing machines. And now, like, we have, thanks to that, we have, you know, like for the moment, 8 people working, you know, as a part-time using the machines and also learning. So yeah, I think it's, and also other than that, we're collaborating with Eliz Lahmacun. You know, he makes great lahmacuns. He's Syrian Armenian. And it's just like amazing to see the power of support we get, like, you know, refugees supporting other refugees. It's just like amazing. And at the beginning, he was like, you know, I want to send 500 lahmacuns per week for free. We were like, no, that's a lot. We can't, you know, like, let's start with 50, 100. And just like the generosity of people and the support is just like amazing to see, and also drives us to continue. Yeah.
Wonderful. Talk about lahmacun. I think we're taking a lot of people's dinner time, but we have only very few questions left. And actually, we have a question from the audience. Christina Puchakjan would like to find out. And Merijan, this question is for you. Can you clarify the mode of registration of NGO in Armenia and about the due taxes, which brings to the main question that we would also like you to very briefly talk about the main differences in governing bodies of NGO and foundation, so that if somebody decides where to go, which way to go.
At first, just I would like to give an overview what kind of non-commercial and non-profit organizations we do have in Armenia. Like, according to our legislation, there are foundations and non-governmental organizations, which is known as NGOs. These differences between these organizations starts from the founding of them, because NGOs must have at least 2 founders, but there is no limitation in case of foundation, because foundation can be also founded by a sole founder. And it can be either a physical person or a legal entity. And in case of NGOs also, they can be both physical entities and NGOs at the same time, or only one of them. What about the foundation? The foundation does not have a membership, unlike the NGOs, which has a formal membership. And both the foundation and the NGOs as nonprofit organizations are legally empowered to engage in the commercial activities itself without establishing a separate entity. This is the changes made by the law on NGOs based on 2017 changes, and before that, that opportunity was not granted to the NGOs. So unless if it chooses so, and to the extent its charter so provides, because it is also important for that part, for that entrepreneurial part. If proceeds generated from such activities should be accounted for separately, because they have to keep separate recordings based on the tax legislation and from non-commercial proceeds, and are subject to taxes. This is the quite and important regulation about that. What about the bodies of highest authority of the foundation? In case of foundation, it is board of trustees. It has the power to develop the strategy of the foundation and oversees its implementation. And what about the NGOs? Is the members meeting, General Assembly, in which case the founders are automatic members of General Assembly. And in case of foundation, it is composed separately. And if the first part of the Board of Trustees is approved by the founders, later parts can be regulated according to the charter and etc. What the main importance I would like to emphasize based on our practice is that in case of NGOs, each and every time you can make changes to the charter according to the General Assembly's decision, and there is no limitation concerning the beneficiaries list or the main aim, mission, and visions, and etc. But in case of foundations, when you are going to make changes in the mission and main aim and the list of beneficiaries of the foundation, you should get the court decree. And that is a time exhausting process and a very difficult to try. That is why when somebody wants to create a foundation, we do advise them to list all the aims and all the missions, all the list of beneficiaries exactly and clearly, in order not to have this issue later during their activities. But in case of NGOs, there is not such a problem. What about tax implications? Both companies and both organizations are exempted from taxes from donations they are getting, because they are non-commercial activities, and if they are doing these activities based on the charter and based on the framework of the aim stipulated in the charter. But as I mentioned, in case of entrepreneurial activities, it is taxed as usually as like you are doing entrepreneurial activities like LLCs or other organizational types. Just to make sure, as Haik mentioned, or Sarkis, I don't remember, to have a professional accountant in order not to have tax problems and etc. That is very important, because in both cases, we do need to have a separate recordings in each and every project and with the exact lines where the money comes and where it goes, like this. And what next? If some questions I do missed, please let me know. You are muted.
Thank you so much. If there are any additional questions, I'll definitely pass them on to you, but thank you so much. This was very informative. I think we're actually coming, trying to sum up. There are a couple of questions that I'd like our panel to answer, and also the audience to also participate. But let's go to Sarkis. For example, how would you personally, aside from the fact that you have your NGO, of course. What kind of NGOs would you like to see emerging in Armenia? And please, panel, if you have any interesting ideas, share.
I mean, in terms of non-governmental organizations, there are thousands of them in Armenia. So in terms of sheer volume and number, there are a lot of NGOs, but in terms of the actual needs of what Armenia needs as a country and what the Armenian people in Armenia need, there are certainly gaps. One of the reasons why Aleppo NGO was created was to deal with the housing crisis that Syrian Armenians faced, especially at the very beginning, when in 2012, thousands were arriving to Armenia. That was one of the primary goals of establishing our organization. Unfortunately, I would say that both us and all of our local and international partners, as well as the Armenian government, has failed to deal with the housing issue of Syrian Armenians. As almost a decade after the unfolding of events, more than 85% of Syrian Armenians continue to rent apartments and rent homes here in the country. So one issue that is definitely dear to my heart personally is there is a need for the establishment of a large fund, not only to give an opportunity for Syrian Armenians, or as we witnessed in August after the Beirut explosion, there was a flow of Lebanese Armenians into Armenia. And most recently, due to the conflict in Artsakh, there were Artsakh Armenians arriving to Armenia. There is a need to create a large fund in Armenia that that will probably be a revolving fund which sets very low interest rates in financing the purchase of apartments. And this would deal with not only, refugees or refugee type of individuals, such as the Syrians, Iraqis, Lebanese, and the Artsakh Armenians, but also because Armenia deals with a demographic crisis due to outmigration, it would be essential to also incorporate all repatriates into a similar type of program. So if we want to think about demographically, dealing with the demographic challenge that Armenia faces, which I think is one of the key problems that we have at the moment, it would be great to establish a large NGO in collaboration with the Armenian government that helps young people or any repat or any refugee type of individual arriving to Armenia to purchase homes. And instead of wasting resources on rent, for example, Syrian Armenians have spent more than $50 million in rent since 2012, and 85% of them are still living in rental apartments. They would use that funding that they use to pay monthly rent to actually become homeowners over a 15 to 25-year period. So that's definitely one gap that is needed to be addressed here in Armenia.
Yes, Haik.
I really like that. I would add though that I would like to see more NGOs, like education-based NGOs, but that are not geared towards children and teens or young adults, but towards older adults, so 40, 50 plus, and even seniors, to help them remain or be more productive and be able to basically make money themselves rather than rely on the younger generations, or to not just give the opportunity to younger generations, which a lot of people and a lot of NGOs are already doing. But like I have my company back in Canada, Students for Seniors, that we teach seniors how to use computers, for example. To see something like that in Armenia too would be very nice. I would, my main thing is, I would say anybody who wants to come in and contribute to Armenia in any way would be more from a business standpoint. So to come and to establish a business here, or even a social, even Sarkis may not be super enthusiastic about social enterprise, but to even open legitimate social enterprises that don't just, not just startups, but actual social enterprises, or just enterprises that create value and create jobs. This has always been my dream for repatriating to Armenia, to create work, And I think that that would be most fruitful. But I like it, Sarkis Jan. I really like the thing about housing. It's very important.
If I can just add about social enterprises, I'm definitely not against the idea of social enterprises, but as Mary mentioned, according to the NGO law of Armenia that was amended in 2017, NGOs and foundations are able to create their own social enterprises and operate it within the same NGO entity. And that is something that Aleppo NGO did. In November 2018, we established the Cuisine Center, where there was a large scale collaboration with local and international partners, including GIZ, which is the equivalent, the German equivalent of USAID. We had individual donors, primarily St. Kevork Armenian Church in Houston, Texas, donors from London, as well as donations from or a grant funding from the Embassy of Japan in Armenia. So we created a fairly large social enterprise in Armenia. It cost around $250,000 just to establish it. And the goal was to create employment opportunities for Syrian Armenian women, as well as local women, to empower them and to basically create gainful employment opportunities for them where their labor rights would also be protected, because that's a major issue in Armenia as well. The challenge there is because Armenia, the legality or the law doesn't necessarily apply to all, or at least people try to evade taxation. If you're running a social enterprise as a non-governmental organization and you're going to comply with all the profit taxes as well as register your employees with their actual salaries, the competitive advantage that a social enterprise has versus an individual private entrepreneur or a business, whether it be a limited liability company or a private entrepreneur, when the NGO is abiding by the law and their competitors are not, whether it's in our case, Syrian Armenian restaurants, for example, you can't really compete. And I guess that's another opportunity for diasporan Armenians or local Armenians to establish NGOs that deal with labor rights issues and with the promotion of rule of law in Armenia, because the law, unless it applies to everyone, social enterprises can't survive, or they will have to engage in illegal activities just like the rest of the businesses in the country.
Makes sense.
Great. Thank you. We have actually several questions that have been asked by the audience, but I think we kind of covered most of them. So here's a direct question to the audience. If you'd like to actually write to us and tell us how you see your engagement, and it's not necessarily a financial engagement. So what are your thoughts on how you would like to see your engagement or with any of these organizations mentioned here from our panelists, or I see some of the communication that's coming here. Mr. Avo Terzen just introduced another organization, which could be a support organization for fundraising. But I actually think that we have covered most of the questions, and I'd like to sum up today's panel discussion with a thought that it's not really important what you do. If you have the urge to help, be part of the picture, just do it. Just start, whether it's recycling or support for artists or helping vulnerable families. I myself was going crazy during war, of course, as most Armenians, lost, helpless, not being able to be of any assistance. So what I did with a couple of new friends whom I found who also had the similar idea that I was kind of cooking, and decided to go and help the farms which were left without the workforce due to the war. All the strong men and some of the women, of course, who were working throughout the year and waiting for their crop to gather for the fall to gather their crop and harvest, were participating in the war. So with our it's not even an NGO, it was just a volunteering effort. We gathered volunteers, collected tons of eggplant and peppers. That you can do something, right? Either gave it back to the field owners or distributed to the needy, then made caviar and in in proper factory conditions, of course, and supported the refugees. Now we're actually fundraising at this point to provide a spring package with these caviar jars, rice, oil. So what my point is at the end, don't wait. If you have an idea and the urge, just do it because you can. Thank you all for participating. Thank you to the panelists as well, and thank you to the audience. If you have any questions, please feel free to write to Repats Armenia, and I'm sure most our panelists will gladly respond. And thank you, Mehdi, as well, for participating. Have a nice evening.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
See ya.